So as I said at the beginning, you need to be grounded at the past, looking to the future, and living in the present. So we've talked about the past quite a bit, and Dr. Verdon is going to talk about today and tomorrow for us. Dr. Verdon is the current Deputy Administrator for Defense Programs. Before that, he was in charge of the weapons program at Livermore, and before that, he was at the University of Rochester. He has a very long and successful career, and we're pleased that he is willing to share his insights with us this morning. So with that, Charlie Verdon.
So good morning, pleasure to be here. So yeah, I guess when we start from the neutron kind of going forward, we'll talk a little bit today about where we are going forward. Steve left a nice setup of where we, how we kind of got where we are from the end of the Cold War to where we are today. So I'll talk a little, talk about today at the high level of what we see coming forward and what actions we're taking in order to make sure that we can provide the weapons needed for the military and to assure our stockpile remains second to none. So, again, just to remind people that, we take our mission seriously of ensuring that the U.S. stockpile remains second to none, not only today but into the future. We view this in really three major areas. Job one for us is to ensure we maintain high confidence in the present active stockpile. So that that's one of the key program deliverables that we have. The other is extending the life of the stockpile as required. I'll touch on this a little bit. There's no one reason why any warhead needs to be extended. There's usually a multiple of reasons, and I'll touch on that a little bit later today. And then the other is all contained with what I call sustaining the nuclear deterrent for the long term. And this is ensuring that we have the capabilities that are there to do this for the long term. That's, anticipating future needs, leveraging technology advances, avoiding surprise. And then paramount to all of it, of course, is ensuring that we have the trained, skilled workforce going forward for the future. So if I kind of just walk through these, as I said, we've actually, we've been successfully sustaining the active stockpile for many years now. We've just recently completed what we refer to as Cycle 23, so you can consider that the number of years that we've been doing the annual assessment reports. This is a very rigorous process that the complex goes through to assess the current state of the stockpile and to provide that information, that's actually codified in federal law, the minimum that the laboratory directors have to provide in a letter, ultimately going unchanged to the president of what the current state of the stockpile is. We've just finished our 23rd year of that. We're into the 24th now. And the stockpile, I'm happy to report, remains safe, secure, and militarily effective. Again, these are the warheads actually that Steve introduced during his talk and their associated delivery platforms. So this is, as I say, a very important aspect of the program. It also is a key training ground for the personnel of the complex in terms of, providing real work that they have to do on the stockpile, real important work that they're doing on the stockpile. So it's one of the key elements of the program of which to, ensure that we have the workforce of today and it's being trained. So as going forward now, if you look at what we have coming forward, as we do have a number of warhead modernization programs that we are undertaking. We will shortly be finishing a modernization acquisition program. We'll have four acquisition programs that are still going forward that are prior to their first production unit. And if those have seen the recent budget release, if authorized and appropriated by Congress, we'll be adding a fifth warhead modernization activity in 2021. The four that we have, right now the modernization activities, people have asked us what do we define that at? We have life extension programs, major alterations and modifications. And what do we do them for? There's aging concerns that we have to address. Sometimes there's sunsetting of technologies that you just can't find the technology to replace it any longer. So you have to renew it with new technology. And then the other is also a synchronization, a careful synchronization and coordination with the Department of Defense as they modernize some of their delivery platforms. As the delivery platforms are changed, we sometimes have to modify how the warheads actually fit and fly within those platforms. So that's another reason why we can undertake a modernization activity. So as I said, there's 4 that are pre-production right now: the B6112 Life Extension Program, the W88 All-370, the W80-4 LEP, and the W87-1 Modification Program. So again, they're driven mainly, by meeting DoD requirements, but also by enhancing the safety and security. If we have the opportunity, as we do these life extension programs, to improve on their safety and security, that is normally supported and endorsed through the complex to undertake those activities. So we are actively working on these. These are, again, quite large efforts. Again, this is an area clearly where training the workforce, we really get to experience kind of from going from the computer screen to product out the door, the training of the workforce. So this is a key component of ensuring we have the necessary skills, knowledge, and ability in our workforce, not only within the plants, but also within the production complex itself. So again, a very important element within the program in terms of the activities that we have to undertake. So these are moving forward. People have heard in the past that we encountered a technical issue on the B6112 and the W88 All-370. We have put in place and are executing the recovery program for that. I'm happy to report, knock wood, everything's moving forward as planned right now on that, so we're on a good trajectory on the recovery program for that. That is another example, though, of always remembering that little things that it's maybe it didn't come across explicitly in all the discussions today, but nuclear weapons program requires a tremendously wide, diverse set of disciplines in order to be able to execute. And the smallest detail can derail you if you don't pay attention to the details. In this case, a capacitor. A capacitor causes us issues. So again, it's a learning experience. It's something that of course we didn't want to occur, but it occurred, and I think we're being what we're trying to make sure is that we recover as we've identified, and we are doing that. I'm happy to report. So now, in terms of, I think, the big issue going forward, a lot of people have used different versions of this chart today. I use it to, pick up the point that I think Steve left, is that one of the things that has happened besides the size of the stockpile coming down over time, quite frankly, our capability to produce nuclear weapons has come down. We just don't have a lot of the capabilities and capacity that we used to have. And so the question, people have often asked me why that happened and things like that, and you can opine different different responses to that. My view is I don't have time to think about why it happened. All I know is it has happened, and I have to put the plans together to recover from it because we're running out of runway. We have to renew these. We have to renew, in particular, the production infrastructure, but also the infrastructure in general. We are still utilizing buildings and facilities every day that were basically built during the Manhattan Project. Many of them are in excess of 50 years old. In fact, one of the key facilities we use is 70+ years old. So they don't meet modern safety standards. Retrofitting them, to meet modern standards can be quite pricey. And so sometimes the best thing to do is just replace them. But you also have to recognize that, from the moment we actually commit to replacing them to the day they're online can be a decade-plus activity. So I still have to maintain those facilities even after we've made a commitment to replace them. And that's really the balancing act that we have going forward, is how to actually move forward with upgrading and replacing these facilities while we still devote the necessary maintenance to ensure that none of these critical facilities fails during that interim period. We do have a number of facilities that if they were to go down for prolonged periods of time, and prolonged in this case isn't that long, there will be impacts within a very short period of time. So the sites are doing spectacular work to keep some of these old facilities functioning, but it is a daily challenge. And when you actually start running into the fact that you can't find the parts anymore for your air conditioning unit, and you have to start building specialized parts to keep these things up, that's kind of a warning sign that maybe you have to take action. And so that's, it's starting to really drive us to say that we are out of runway in a lot of these areas, and we have to start taking actions on these facilities. So what we've done is we've put together a plan. We've looked across the complex, and the NNSA has worked together to identify all of the facilities of which need some attention. We recognize we can't do them all at once, so we said, okay, let's establish a priority for how we're going to do this. And what we established was really two key objectives. One was the priority had to support delivering the warheads that the Department of Defense requires, and the other is workforce safety. We have some buildings that are literally disassembling themselves, and so we have to address those buildings as well. So those were the two main drivers right now. So we recognized that we couldn't do everything, but our priorities were ensuring, as I say, ensuring we delivered for the military and ensuring that our workforce had a safe working environment. So that entails a number of different, essentially we're touching just about every site in terms of upgrading capabilities. But as I say, we're not trying to do everything at once. We know we can't do that. So in terms of what we're looking at, if you look at plan design, designing around ensuring that we can deliver key components. That's the other thing that we've done recently is prior to this, there was a lot of talk around strategic materials. What we recognized was, and people used to refer to them as the UMs because they all ended in UMs. But what you quickly find out is there's a lot more strategic materials that one ends up in UMs. And so what we've actually done now is we've rejiggered that a little bit to actually focus around the strategic components. What does it actually take to build the major components of a warhead, and that way we can focus to make sure that we have the capabilities to provide the component that really matters into the production of the warhead. So in this case, this is just a summary of some of the key facilities that we're looking at that are associated with production of a primary. And so this is high explosives. If you look back during what Steve referred to, during the times that they were doing it, we had 4 vendors that could supply us with high explosives. We're down to 1 for the nation right now. And it's turning out that it's a Department of Defense facility. They're working well with us, but we aren't their main customer. We have extremely high requirements compared to their other major customers. So we are looking at revitalizing and recapitalizing capability that we used to have at Pantex to do a lot of this work ourselves so that we could actually formulate, synthesize, and produce the high explosives that we need, because the legacy stockpiles of high explosives have been expended. The other is tritium. We're working on, we have a plan and we're executing on the plan to produce the required amounts of tritium for the warheads going forward. We've taken a long-term look. We have a strategy that goes out at least through 2040, and we're actually working already on the strategy beyond 2040. But we have a plan in place for that, and happy to report we've gotten support for that, both from the administration and from Congress, and we're executing on that plan to execute that going forward. And so that's in place, and as I say, we are already working on what do we do post-2040. And then plutonium, we again have the requirement to produce 80 war reserve plutonium pits within 2030. We are focused on that. We are focused on the two-site preferred solution. We're Los Alamos at 30 pits a year and Savannah River at 50 pits a year. So we're working on the implementation of that plan now. We're executing equipment installation and activities at Los Alamos, and we're in conceptual design at the Savannah River site. So we are, as I say, we're focused on that. We recognize it's a challenge. 2030 represents a challenge, but I think as both Ev and Steve, I hopefully, highlighted that this community has risen to challenges in the past and addressed them. So we will continue to, strive to do that going forward. That we think, again, we have to get back to where we are producing plutonium pits to address the long-term needs, or the near-term and long-term needs of the deterrent. So we have, as I said, to put more rigor around this, each one of these areas, high explosives, plutonium, tritium, each one has been assigned a federal program manager, that's their morning, noon, and night job, is to worry about ensuring that we're develop the plans and are executing the plans. And again, all the sites are working, we're all working well together on this and committed to doing it. In the area of other strategic components, I highlight here work predominantly at the Y-12 National Security Complex. This is around what we refer to as canned subassemblies, but basically around uranium. People are familiar with the uranium processing facility. Construction continues on that. Reestablishing production capability for radiation cases and depleted uranium and lithium. These are all projects that are moving forward as, again, keeping an eye on what are we required to do to meet the military's requirements. These are the facilities and capabilities that we're working on. So clearly the uranium processing facility is new. The lithium processing facility is new. Other areas, we've actually worked closely with Y-12 management to identify what I'll call facilities with good bones, things that we could actually just recapitalize and reuse versus having to just replace the entire facility. So we're using a combination of both approaches to modernize, is identifying those facilities that still have life in them and with a bit of investment can last much longer. Others we just have to accept, like in the case of the lithium facility and UPF, the uranium processing facility, we had to start with a new facility. But that's the approach we're taking. The other is also now in the area of non-nuclear components. The non-nuclear components, this was an area that prior to recent events, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of non-nuclear components. And so over time, it kind of got spread out all over the place within the program. We recognized that actually we needed to treat this as a component as well. And then we consolidated all of the activities associated with all of the infrastructure needs associated with the production of non-nuclear components, again, under one federal program manager. We have plans in place that we have to increase. We actually are beginning to execute on them, of increasing, because of the increasing workload, is to provide additional manufacturing floor space and equipment, particularly at Kansas City National Security Campus. There we are actually, we're partaking in, we're utilizing approaches of both rearranging the floor space within the existing Kansas City National Security Campus plant, as well as leasing additional buildings. And because we have near-term needs of which trying to put up new buildings won't address it in a timely manner, so we are actually working and have received the authority to actually do leases for building to get additional floor space. So we're taking that approach. Equipment installation, we're also recapitalizing facilities at Sandia, which also has not only the design mission for the non-nuclear components, they also have a production mission there as well. So we are working to recapitalize some of the existing facilities at at Sandia, which have gotten a little bit long in the tooth as well. The other, again, is hardened electronics. Some people refer to that predominantly as the MESA facilities, so rad-hard integrated circuits. We have a plan in place to go through 2040 by recapitalizing capabilities within the MESA facility, and other associated facilities, but Sandia kind of refers to it as the Mesa Complex. And then we're working on a long-term plan of what do we do post-2040. We're actually working closely with that with the Department of Defense because they have similar needs. So it's a very good multi-agency effort to take a look at. You know, the Venn diagram isn't a complete 100% overlap, but even just admitting that, you know, seeing that there is overlap says that we should work together, and we're working well together, not only on rad-hard electronics, but it turns out even on electronics and other electronics in general, we're working on how to ensure we have a viable vendor base going forwards for both of our agencies. So it's a good collaborative effort with ourselves and the Department of Defense in the area of the non-nuclear components. The other is, you know, that's the production. So what, you know, we are modernizing a lot of the production complex. I say it's not the entire complex. We did a risk evaluation of the complex, and we attacked those which we had the highest risks around or which we no longer had the capability. So we had to address those. Those got the priority. Now, the other is, you know, in this is we still can't and don't forget about our science, engineering, and technology. It really underpins all of our stockpile decisions and actions. You know, that was the name, Science-Based Stockpile Stewardship. And it's true that it is really key to have the understanding in order to underpin the actions that we take. So we have 4 major components within the science area, the broader science program, understanding the basic physics associated with weapons performance, advanced simulation and computing, the large-scale computers, inertial confinement fusion. This is where we have our high energy density or our matter extreme condition experimental capabilities. And then our engineering programs, and we've also taken this opportunity recently to revamp our engineering programs to have them focused on aging assessments, survivability, and also technology and manufacturing maturation. As we've gotten more into the warhead modernization program, we've grown to realize again how important it is to do the early technology and manufacturing maturation to a readiness level to where it's ready to be transferred over to within a weapons acquisition program to take on at that, you know, to bring within the program at that time. But we've now again, that had been spread out over a number of areas within the program. We've consolidated all of that within the engineering programs. And we are working that now in a much more strategic manner, closely coordinated with what the warhead modernization programs need, but also looking further out. And then the other, I would say, is it's been a realization on our part that it isn't just the technology maturation that matters, it's also the manufacturing maturation that matters. So we've enhanced that program to not only worry about the technologies, but also the manufacturing. So therefore, it's not only the laboratories that are involved, but it's also the plants that are more involved in that activity now as well. As part of the modernization program, when we looked out and we said, what are our needs? We did identify 2 gaps in our, if you like, in our certification capabilities, our certification tools. And one was exascale computing, you know, higher capabilities, larger capabilities than we have presently right now. That if we looked out forward at some of the warhead modernization activities coming, the computational needs are greater than what the capabilities we have right now at the fidelities necessary. So we are working closely with the Office of Science. We have a joint effort to provide exascale computing capabilities for both the Office of Science and the NNSA. So NNSA's first machine is targeted to arrive in around 2022 with the first programmatic use in 2023, and it'll be sited at Lawrence Livermore. And then the other gap is really improving our subcritical experiments. This is experiments that we do about 1,000 feet underground at the Nevada National Security Site. We are enhancing the experimental capabilities that facility has right now to continue to do higher fidelity experiments relevant to certification of of the warhead modernization activities, as well as assessment of the active stockpile. These experiments are designed, again, all the experiments we are considering still are designed to remain subcritical, and they do adhere to the U.S. policy of zero yield. So we are not going into the realm where we're producing yield. We are staying subcritical, and we're also adhering to the zero yield with these new enhanced capabilities. But these were identified by the laboratories as needed elements to support the warhead modernization program going forward. So we have active programs, as I say, in both of these areas to bring these capabilities into fruition in time to support the warhead modernization activities. Another important aspect, which we don't talk about much, but it's actually key, and for obvious reasons I won't say a lot about because of what it is, but it's our secure transport. We have an organization within the NNSA that's responsible for the shipment of warheads, components, and materials. It's our secure transport. It provides the safe and secure transport of these materials. Their job is defend, recapture, recover materials if, God forbid, they ever came under attack during transport. So they're ensuring convoy safety. What we have identified there, again, is just as with, right now the vehicles we have gotten old. We are upgrading those vehicles to new, modern, improved standards, new, modern protection standards. So we're in the process right now of upgrading those vehicles, testing them, and then we'll go into production on those vehicles. So this is a major important driver, important aspect of our program is to continue the good record, again, I'll knock wood, continue the good record of the secure transport that we've had. And the other, of course, is we also, the agents that we have are for the NNSA, and we've been given authority to increase the number of agents that we have, and we're actively doing that right now and successfully bringing on more agents to meet our requirements. So this is another key area that we're focused on modernizing is our transport vehicles. Then I'll say a few words about the other thing that's absolutely key, and that's the workforce. And I noticed on this slide, I think we only made this slide a couple of weeks ago, and it's already out of date. I actually think our combined workforce is approaching roughly 50,000. So we are increasing the number of our workforce across the complex. We recognize that the work load has gone up significantly, so we've been working closely with the plants and the sites, laboratory sites, to ensure that they're hiring the people necessary. I'm happy to report that they are. We've actually worked on a number of innovative ways, not only for the federal workforce but for the sites workforce to attract people to the program. And then all the sites are responsible, obviously, for their own hiring, but we are actually doing joint efforts in recruiting, and that is actually going quite well. One of the things that we're looking at here is, if you notice the one last bullet on the left-hand side, we have a potential for a large number of retirements in a relatively short period of time. So we need to bring the workforce on where we have some opportunity to hopefully transfer some of the skills, knowledge, and abilities from those people to the new workforce. So that's another one of the the implicit parts of the modernization activity is bringing on the new workforce fast enough that we can actually have this overlap between them and the experienced workforce before they depart. So I'm happy to report that all the sites have been doing a really good job there. It's not easy. There's clearly a lot of competition out there. But one of the things, it's all these interesting things of what attracts the new generation to this field. It's one of the things that they really kind of they come to right away is even the unclassified nuclear posture reviews and the support that we've been getting from the administration and from Congress for our budgets, is they're getting the strong message that the nation cares about this. So they're willing to devote their careers to starting into the program. They find the work exciting, but to a lot of them, actually, they want to know that they're working on something that the nation cares about. And so there's been a lot of good messages that have come out recently over the last number of years that says the country is recognizing that maybe the nuclear deterrence slipped into the background for a while. It's time to bring it out forward, and it's important that it get modernized not only in the Department of Defense but also in the NNSA. And again, it's really a joint activity, and the newer generation is seeing that. So, as I say, we have, hiring fairs. We've been going out going to universities. We've been doing it jointly. All the sites are represented at some of these hiring fairs. We've been doing things like being able to do on-the-spot hiring, things that we hadn't done before. So we are really being, quite active and aggressive in coming up with different and novel approaches. Everyone's doing best practices to make sure we do this effectively. And as I say, I'm happy to report that we are, succeeding at this. And then the other, as I say, is important, and I'll even touch on in my talk tomorrow, offering the people the opportunity to gain the skills, knowledges, and ability necessary. We're still trying to maintain a program that offers that diverse spectrum of work necessary to make sure that we get a well-rounded workforce, that they understand what's necessary, they understand this is complicated. As I mentioned, they understand that if somebody drops the ball, even if it's a small issue, it can derail a whole project, and that they have to work together in this multidisciplinary teams. So as much as we are focused on the near term of the modernization program, we are also focused on ensuring that we keep this broader look and of what we have to do across the entire spectrum of activities to make sure that our workforce gets that training that they need. So with that, I'll just I'll end kind of with a different version of the beginning. Maintaining our current stockpile, that's, we focus on that as job one. Delivering on the warhead modernization activities, clearly a high priority that we are heavily focused on. And now the production modernization that, just because the life extension programs are funded doesn't mean they can be delivered without the production complex there to support those life extension programs. So renewing the production complex is key. As I said, in many cases we are running out of runway, particularly when I mentioned that some of these things will take over a decade to put in place. So you have to plan for that going forward. And then the other is preparing for the future. We are continuing to look out over the horizon to make sure that we don't let the tyranny of the immediate we don't take our eye off the ball of the future. And so we have activities that are always looking out over the horizon to not only what could be of benefit to our complex, but also what could threaten our complex. So we have active programs in those areas as well. So, I think it's, we have a lot of work going forward. It's challenging work, but the nuclear weapons program has always had challenging work. I think some of the timelines that were put up this morning showed that there was challenging timelines right from the start that the program delivered for. So that's part of the pedigree of the program. And as I say, we're committed to implementing it as quickly as we can in order to make sure, as I say, that we, number one, deliver for the military the warheads that they require, have the capabilities in place to do that for the long term. And then I say the other is, of course, to make sure that we have the workforce and that they're provided a safe and secure working environment. And with that, I'll stop.